Hello, hello, hello. So who was here last time? Wait, I need one. Were you guys here last time? Last year? Okay, good. You were here. So I only got two people. Is my mic working?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, is that right distance? 1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Is this being live streamed?
Yes.
Why aren't you here? Like, really, why aren't you here? If you're watching this right now, you should be here, and you should bring your medical kits. Next year, people bring their first aid kits. People who actually bring a first aid kit that's functional, I will give you something.
Virtual attendees only get virtual credit.
Yeah, virtual attendees, you get a virtual gift.
That's fine.
Yeah. So, oh, give him a handout. So, people come here and they want to see kits, and this is not the. I think probably some people don't come to my talks because they want to geek out on the technology, what they can get, the what's new, what's great, what's cool, and that's not what this is about. This is about making a functional medical supply system for the group that you are a part of, and it really doesn't matter it doesn't matter so much that you have good stuff. What matters is that you have the right stuff for the right applications. And as you see on your handout, first thing, take home. Your medical kit should not be designed in a vacuum. People who either buy a medical kit or they go and they read on the internet, this is what you should have in your IFAC or whatever. People who do that, I mean, it's fine, it works, but I always think of those are the first people to go in a really bad disaster, because that shows a disassociation from your community. And your community is who's going to help, who's going to need help, and all of the pertinent, because when a natural disaster happens or a major home disaster, a home fire, whatever, you're going to have a unique situation. Even the most cookie cutter of housing developments, everybody's pretty unique. So, going into my do's and don'ts, item 1A, don't buy a pre-made medical kit. The last thing you should ever do is buy a pre-made medical kit. They are overpriced. The material in these medical kits is usually pretty substandard. It's packaged wrong. It's packaged to be hanging on a wall and not be exposed to the elements. And even the metal sealed boxes, open and close enough times, and they lose their weatherproofing. The next thing is avoid the Pelican case. Often you'll see people go like, I've got my medical kit, and they come out and they pull out this Pelican case. Pelican cases, you have to carry them with one hand. They're a lot of excess weight, and most of your medical supplies shouldn't be able to be destroyed. You should have them packed in such a way, and we'll talk about that. They should be packed in something, I think you should either have one shoulder strap or two shoulder straps. Everything I have here is for deployment in the deserts, jungles, natural disaster areas. You need to hand out, May?
You guys.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
Go ahead.
Okay. The next don't I have. Oh yeah, next thing. As far as making things durable, what makes things the most durable is actually vacuum sealing. If you vacuum seal stuff in packages, you can put it in a bag and it'll be sealed up. Bandages hold up really well if everything's vacuum sealed. That also gives you a hermetic protection. Which segue to the next thing, cardboard. If you guys have a medical kit in your workplace, who has a medical kit at the workplace? And what's everything in? Little cardboard boxes? Okay. Sprinklers go off, somebody left the medical kit open. Anything that's not sealed, it's garbage. Now, this is in general tailored to towards the Cascadia quake. When the Cascadia quake happens, all of those metal safety kits, all of the wall-mounted first responder industrial medical kits, they are all going to be on the floor. They're going to get shaken loose. They're going to fall over. They're going to crack open. So, eschew cardboard. If things are in cardboard, pull them out. Get a vacuum sealer. Who has a vacuum sealer here? Okay. Get a vacuum sealer. You will be surprised how much you use your vacuum sealer once you get your vacuum sealer. But how many people who do have vacuum sealers thought, oh, I'm going to put my bandages, right? Vacuum sealed bandages, which I actually don't have any. But I will say, my friends who do vacuum seal their bandages, that is the best way to store them. So you get a box of gauze, and get rid of the cardboard, put in a vacuum sealer, seal it up, notch it so you don't need a pair of scissors, and you're set. Now getting to the next part of it, who here doesn't have neighbors? Okay, good. Now that we all have neighbors, who's built their medical kit with their neighbors? Okay, so who here, when their house burns down, is going to go to their neighbors? Who is going to have their neighbors at your house when their house burns down? Okay, so the what I always think is the single largest problem with medical kit construction is the absolute essential thing is if you like. The last time I designed a unique medical kit, I was the foreman for the rigging crews at Climate Pledge Arena, and unfortunately I didn't bring one of these kits, but I had 12 workers on rope working 10 hours a day, 165 feet on the air, on rope, and doing a lot of cutting, a lot of things, and we had kits that we had mounted to their climbing harnesses, and they were deployed in a really interesting order of operations. The first thing was a Band-Aid, and it was all stacked in there, and if somebody got hurt, the first thing was, I'll show you in a minute, one of these Telfa pads. And we didn't have Band-Aids. I'm going to open this for you, and then I'll let you pass it around. And instead of they're Band-Aids. Telfa makes a gauze pad that actually has an adhesive to it. So the first thing was a Telfa pad. Second thing were little liquid, little bits of saline for eye wash. And then the next thing was compression bandage. I'm trying to think. And the final thing, actually the first thing was a tourniquet. The first thing was a tourniquet. One of the rubber tourniquets. First thing was a tourniquet. Second thing was one of those Telfa pads. The next thing was eye wash. And the next thing was a compression bandage. And the whole point was they were working at height. So we had to factor in, you're going to drop this stuff if it's an emergency. You know, you never drop anything when you're at height, and these people are programmed in. They don't drop anything. But first thing's tourniquet, pull it out, and the entire kit would have exploded. But it doesn't matter, because if you have a tourniquet at your height, and everything's just going to come raining down. The next thing was this adhesive Telfa pad, and that was for if you had a little laceration. Then you have then you'd have your little squirt bottle. These are for people who are on respirators like APAP, but they are sterile saline, and they're great. Some of them, you got to make sure that it's not one of the companies that bottled it in China, because some of them were contaminated, but it's enough to flush out your eye. And then the final thing was a compression bandage. And if you guys don't know what compression bandage is, or we'll talk about that later. But the idea was that people would start tossing things out. It was very site specific. And that was a really good example of what do we need for our medical kits. And the manager of the company I work with, the office manager, was like, oh, hey, I got first aid kits for you guys. It's like nothing in there had any application whatsoever for people who are working with sheet metal and power tools at height. And so I was like, okay, hey, no, give me I was like, Ryan, give me some money. And I made these kits, and they turned out really good. But it really hit home how much I'd never really thought about it quite like this before, how you really need to tailor everything. So we'll go into what I have for my kitchen. So for my kitchen, I've got like a box, and you always have your tourniquet at the top. I've got a thing to scrub. I've got my big eye wash. I got my Coban. But then, all separate from all that, I have an index card holder with Band-Aids. And I'm in nursing school, so I've been cutting myself a lot, so I actually went through half a pack if it's totally full and they stack perfectly. But I've been cutting the hell out of myself. And then I take a soap dish container, and I have, Neosporin and your silver, and some hydrocortisone. And in the end, this sits on top of the medical kit, and that just and I never go into this because this is 99.9% of all I need. But conversely, Matt, where'd you go, Matt? You might want to pan over here. So when I'm in Iraq, I have a mobile hospital. I got my bleed kit, microsurgery, orthopedics. Actually, that's microsurge, airway, and diagnosis kit, splinting, baby delivery, and another. This is all large trauma, airways, and all that. And so, it's like, what's your kit gonna be? And the only way you're gonna determine what your kit is if you talk to your neighbors and go, how can we get hurt in the event of A, B, C, D, E? Things so something I put in here, item D2. Does anybody have like poker night or Trivial Pursuit? Do you guys do that anymore? Yeah. Okay, so here's one to add. Hang out with your neighbors, and I mean, this is a public event, so I didn't know if I could say disaster quarters or something, but like, make it like a drinking game. Everybody speculates what's going to happen, what the disaster is going to be, and if somebody can't guess it, then they have to drink, or I don't know, make it something fun. By next year's thing, I will actually have a game that's sort of like Spin the Bottle, except it's Spin the Disaster. And maybe we can make some sort of disaster game for you to work with your neighbors. I'm still trying to figure out how to get people to actually talk to their neighbors. Seattle had a thing that's later on in here called SNAP, which is Seattle Neighborhood Actively Prepares. And I don't know if the program's active right now. I'm still trying to find out. But it is. Okay, it was sometime during COVID, there was this lull as all the administrators during COVID sort of disappeared. But if it snaps back. Yeah. So anyway, after you if you guys meet with your neighbors and you play Spin the Disaster, then you can avoid item 1E, which is the thing you don't want to do. You don't want to get your information from a consultant. You don't want somebody to tell you what to put in your medical kit. You can have somebody who gives you, like go take a whiffer course if you really want to be prepared. But then after you take your whiffer course and it gives you your general knowledge, then come home, hang out with your neighbors, play Spin the Disaster, and use your imaginations. But looking online and saying, oh, this is your disaster kit, you're not going to get the right things. Okay, so the next thing that happens, so who has nothing? Who has no first aid kit at home? Who has a first aid kit that they've used it and said, I wish I had? Okay. Item 2AI. Do you have a notebook in your first aid kit? Like something like you write down what you don't have. Immediately after the person quits spraying blood on the walls and you deal with that, and they quit hyperventilating and they quit screaming at you, at that point in time you go, oh shit, I needed that. Write it down. Because one of the first essentials we have, if you've taken the ICS courses, who's taken the ICS courses? Okay. Incident Command System, it's a FEMA thing. Probably the biggest thing they tell you is this all came, or it's like OSHA. Everything in OSHA was written in blood. And your first aid kit, the best things you're going to add to it are the things that are written in blood. So item 2A1 and 2, have your notebook, because your first aid kit should evolve. That kit is all brand new, because every time I go to Iraq and I'm leaving, I give everything away, and when I repack it, it's always completely different. The idea that you restock with the same things, every time I go out into the field and I come back, it is always different, because I realize, oh, it can be better. I mean, it evolves slowly. There's things that you always have. You have like tourniquets strapped all over. You have compression bandages ready to pop out. You have airways. But there's all the finicky stuff. That's what makes it a first aid kit, medical kit, IFAC. That's what makes it really useful. Okay. Going into the back page, everybody should think about enrolling in SNAP, if SNAP is actually working now. The absolute back page of this has a little pseudo-SNAP thing that I authored for everybody. But the link on here, Seattle Gov Department's Emergency SNAP Preparing with Neighbors PDF, that has your link to the SNAP program. And you walk around, say hi to your neighbors, and be like, I'm not an axe murderer, I'm somebody who actually likes to prepare. And there's an earthquake that's going to happen, and we want our neighborhood to be this nice little homey unit. And so we're all going to talk to each other and say, hey, this is what we need to do. I'm very fortunate. I've got, I'm an EMT, and I just went to nursing school. Next door, I have a former EMT. The next door down is a paramedic firefighter, and then the person across the street is LNP, and then I got a few other people. So it's like we have an enclave, and it just happened that way. And I'm like, wow, we're gonna be so set. It's gonna be cool. And the other nice thing is, if you were actually with your neighbors, and you were building a kit together, then you can buy in bulk. And that saves you a lot of money. And if you just go onto Amazon, you'll see. It's like, okay, I want this. It's easier to buy a pack of 20. Okay, next thing is a thing called March Pause. And this is as far as I'm going to go into first aid. And if you look on page 3, This is, so I don't know if people have heard of ABCs, airway, bleeding, circulation, and then there's D's and E's, if some people add it. I prefer the March pause, and that's massive bleeding, airway, respiration, circulation, and then the H is something they just sort of filled in to make it a word. So they said, oh yeah, we'll make it hypothermia and head injuries. But hypothermia is actually environmental conditions. So that's your body wrap. And head injuries is like ingumentary, skin, concussions, etc. And then pause, that gets into the more complex situations. So pain, antibiotics, wounds, and splinting. When you get to pause, you generally want a more advanced provider there, or you better hope that a more advanced provider has gotten there, because managing pain, infection, significant wounds, or bracing or setting a break or sprain, that can be, I mean, it can be really trivial, but it can also be a lot of work, and it can require significant supplies unless you've been trained to improvise. There's a really cool school up in Bellingham, remote medical training, and they have some really good courses where they teach management of wounds with improvised materials. And I will say that I was hoping actually one of the RMT instructors was going to be here today, but he wasn't able to make it. They make some pretty, they will throw you out in the woods, and you will have some cord and what you can find, and you'll have to patch people up. Anyway, getting on to the next point. So you have your disaster kit. Another thing I don't like is I don't like one kit for all. My KitchenAid is way different than what I take out of the field. This is what I take hiking. That's what I have in my kitchen. And those are things I take overseas. Because I'm associated with the emergency hubs, I have a separate bag that I call my blood bag. And this is just like, it's gauze. It's gauze, and I've even got towels for when gauze runs out. And this is just wound packing. And you don't need that, but I have a lot of people that will show up. My neighbors, the flip side is your neighbors will start showing up at your door and saying, I'm like, oh shit. And so you have to go and you have to fix them. But it's good because then you go, then they bring you cookies and everything's better. So anyway, but yeah, in general, I think it's always safe to have a car kit, a boo-boo kitchen, cut your finger off because you reached into the Vegematic. And then your disaster kit, ideally, if you have a disaster kit, you should have it 40 feet from your house in a job box that you have cemented into your garden. But that's probably more than most people do. But ideally, because we live in a subduction zone quake area, if I were you, I would have a small cement pad outside of the range your house is going to fall, and put a job box there, and that's where your blood bag would go. Anyway, going to the back page. This is your homework. You're that guy. That's the person to your north. That's the person to your south. That's the person across the street. And then onwards each way. If you can't fill this out, you are susceptible. But if you fill this out and you give it to your neighbors, copies, then you have an amazing amount of security. You need to know, what are they capable of? What are their needs? What's their email? What's their cell? If you have a bunch of radio operators, instead of cell, you can write down which repeater they're going to be on. But that is my gift to you. That's how it's different this time. A lot of people walked away from this, and I don't think they went and talked to their neighbors. But now, all I have is a sheet of paper, and you can go, you have all this medical kit stuff, and you can go over and knock on your neighbor's house, and after they put the gun away because you were knocking on their door. I live in White Center, right? So it's like, they come to the door, and they're like, what do you want? And I was like, I get this. Yeah. But, you have a med kit, so if they shoot you, sucking chest wound, nobody dies from those unless it's a hollow point. They just hurt really bad. That's the old joke, right? Why do sucking chest wounds hurt so bad? Because nobody dies from them, and they can say, "Oh, it hurt so bad," right? Things that nobody talks about how much they hurt. It's because they don't, because they died, right? Yeah. Everybody go do that. Okay, so now I have another 10 minutes for the questions and answers.
Well, not a question, but just to help break in of meeting your neighbors, there is a national every August. The first Tuesday of every August is Night Out. Your neighbors' Night Out is supported by the Seattle Police Department. And I am the block captain of, so we know our neighbors, and we have our block and the blocks next to us. So I definitely use that as a tool to get neighbors to come and meet each other, have a meal together. We grill, we eat, we just socialize and get to know each other. So that might help with the getting to know who's around you.
So what kind of bags do you recommend?
I guess
Everybody who asks a question gets a gift. I have a lot of different ways. My big thing is don't use something that's heavy and has a handle. Have something that has straps that you can throw it across your body. I kind of like messenger bags because you can throw them around and open them up. Marsupial. When fanny packs got invented, a friend of mine who was a evolutionary biologist was just like, wow, this is really evidence that at some point in time, our lineage, we had marsupial pouches because everybody did this so fast and it caught on so fast. I am absolutely a sworn fan of Mystery Ranch's medical line. I've used them all over the world in really horrible situations, but actually TSSI makes this pack, and oddly enough, even though Mystery Ranch I think are the best design packs, this is the pack I've had in the most horrible conditions. And again, it's a backpack. I do have a link in here. This is Mystery Ranch's VLAC, and it's kind of cool. It folds up. I like the trifold design where you snap it open, pop open a lid, and you can flip it open. I also like panel loaders, like my large pack, and also like the TSSI. I think aesthetically, I just like the trillium shape when it opens up. But Mystery Ranch stuff, it's no secret that the military has tried to destroy Mystery Ranch packs, and they can't. Cafaro are actually, I like Cafaro packs better for carrying stuff, but for access of things, I think Dana Gleason, who's the owner of Mystery Ranch, he's probably the most brilliant pack maker of our time, and he really got it right with that. But yeah, here, do you have one of these yet?
I do.
Oh,
I asked the question last time.
oh God, yeah. What do you need? Do you have sterile drapes?
I do.
Now you have another. Okay, next question. Yeah.
You said you have towels when gauze runs out. Why take up space with towels and not just more gauze?
Because sometimes you also have to mop stuff up off the floor. and it's sort of this dual purpose thing. You're not going to want to. It's one of those things of like at some point there have been situations where I've been in where we literally start tearing up clothes. But if you have towels, you can mop things up. Also, the whole sterile field, the blue pads, Chuck's pads, things like that. We've used those a lot. Yeah, so it depends. But it's one of those things just pragmatically. I think it was pretty much only in Sinjar where we were using towels, but it's just, you want sometimes, I've been in situations where we're mopping stuff up and also packing people.
So you're not using you're prioritizing the towels versus post cleanup, not as active.
Yeah. It's just like the stuff for your cleanup, like your cleanup equipment, and that's getting into like apocalyptic events. But the idea is that your items that would be used for sterile field, cleanup, sanitation, be ready to pack. Because who knows? I mean, it's like, I also have a sleeve of Cipro. And it's like, right, pack, start taking this.
That's multi-purpose, not just bleeding control.
Everything in your kit should be multi-purpose. Oh, yeah, like, damn it, somebody stole it. So there's a thing, do you have a water bottle? No, does anybody have a regular water bottle? I'll give you a really cool multi-use demonstration in a minute.
Are you running just dressings in there, or are you also putting any bleeding control?
Depends on the wound.
No, for the bag.
Oh, that is literally a bag of gauze.
Okay, I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
conceptualize what.
Sometimes I have a bunch of This is just an afterthought. Yeah, no, I've just got like iodine, gauze. It's kind of extra stuff I had, and it's like, okay, this can mop up or it can pack. And it's like, pump. I got some iodine. I had a pocket full of tourniquets in here, but honestly, one of the pockets, water bottle pockets, was like 8 tourniquets, and I just have been giving them away to people. It's like, here, have a softie. And so I got to resupply it with tourniquets, but I haven't been out in the field in like 5 years, I think. Well, for COVID, COVID wasn't really a medical situation, it wasn't really a trauma situation, so all my trauma stuff is like, I mean, I don't immediately restock it because I'm already ridiculously overprepared. So, multi-use. So this, if you go online, this is something, it's called Kulo Clean. Everybody grab your phones and look it up because you actually want to get this. You're probably going to want to get this. This is a portable bidet. And I don't know if any of you guys use bidets, but I can tell you, these things work awesome for bidets. So, but also, it's a really great wound irrigator. So CULO clean, because your other option is, well, you're also going to have to use one of these, a little debrider. And I will tell you that if somebody's got a big laceration, scrubbing them with this is going to be a lot more painful than this, and sometimes you still have to scrub. That's for the first aid course. But irrigating wounds, hands down to date, this is the best thing I have ever seen. So, oh, here, catch. You asked a question. Put your Neosporin in that. It's a soap dish holder, but it fits a Neosporin and a burn cream and like hydrocortisone. Perfect. Next question. Okay. Yeah.
Is there a certain brand or style of bandage that's better than others that to kind of pack in general use kit?
I like, most of my stuff's Telfa. It really depends on the wound. And that, again, goes into a level of, that's a 6-hour argument session right there. Everybody's got their favorite stuff. Something I do like are there's Telfa makes a reinforced bandage that, do you have one of those in your kit? Did I give you one?
Probably.
Telfa makes these really cool circular bandages, and they look like they have a spider web. Afterwards, I'll look up and see if I can find them. But I like those because for like deep punctures, packed wounds, it has a little more structure to it. But most stuff, these little Telfa, these little adherent, I love that because that's your base coat and then you start taping over it. I do everything from little stick cuts from sticks in the woods to things that I have to put Steri-strips on with these. It's quick, it's fast, and it's like, bam. Yeah.
Have you heard of that they're using tampons or condoms?
What was that?
Tampons for condoms?
Yeah, that's not recommended. No, tampons don't really work as good as people think. Here, try.
What would you recommend?
It depends on the gunshot wound. There's a lot of different kinds of gunshot wounds. If it's a ballistic amputation from a 50 caliber round, you put a tourniquet on it. But if it's just, I've seen people come into the ER with gunshot wounds and they've stopped bleeding on their own, and the doctors don't take the bullets out, and that's actually from a case. That's actually from a case I was a juror on. The defendant still had the bullets in him, and it was like 6 months later, and they were like, "Well, we thought it would," I was like, "Okay." But I mean, literally, the guy was shot by three 9mm, went into his leg. One of them lodged in his bone. He probably didn't need any bandages. So gunshot wounds, people are like, GSW. I was like, what kind? And again, that goes into a first aid class. Some people like to have combat gauze and pack it, but that's going to be complex. There's the IT clamp, which is this. I have an IT clamp somewhere. I don't think I have a trainer. So, like, there's everything. The IT clamp is like a hair clip, and you put it on, and it creates a little clot. But you have to really know what major vessels, if any major vessels got penetrated, ripped, torn, fractured. So it's just, a gunshot wound is something that's been tossed around in the news a lot, but it could be anything under the sun. I mean, I had to cut off a kid's hand because he had a gunshot wound, and the doctor was like, "Can you do stitches?" I was like, "Yeah, I can do stitches." And I was like, "I'm busy." And he tamponated stuff, and it was a messy situation. But that was actually towels. We actually had to use towels to wrap that kid's stump. It was really, really, really awful. Anyway, other questions? Yeah.
Have you found a good way to store Coban in a small first aid kit? Because I find
Buy animal wrap, and it's going to go bad, and you're not going to pay as much money, because I think there's a link on that thing to get animal wrap. It's the same as Coban. It's just not made for humans. It does fine for humans. It's the manufacturing process is the same. And just accept the fact that your Coban's going to go bad. There's nothing you can do about it. I had literally a case of Coban, and it was sealed up, and it went bad, and it was a lot of money. But Iraq shut down the airports in the region I was working in, and 2 years later, I was like, well, when I go back here, it's like, oh yeah, all my Coban's dead, because it just sat in a box. So these things happen. Buy in small quantities, because think about it. Look at the back sheet and think about your neighbors. You're going to need 4 rolls of Coban if your neighborhood falls into a fault line. You're probably okay with that. And if it's animal wrap, that's $10 every year. So what? Restock. And then you can have at your disaster spin the disaster party with your neighbors. You can practice using the Coban once a year, and then you use up your Coban and get new Coban. That's probably the best strategy. I'll see what I got for you. What do you need?
Down in here, gauze pads.
Oh, I got some of those. Next question. Any more questions?